Oh, if you're looking for a music video, this isn't it. But stick around, we'll have a good time.
Love Jesus. Ignore religion. I am really going to have to explain that. Going to have to explain what is this religion you ignore and where it is and how to do that.
So what do I mean by love Jesus, ignore religion? Well, the religion I'm talking about is not the one that we characterize by the glass and stone buildings, brick buildings, the ones that are characterized by meeting in homes. It's the one that's up here. Because no matter where you go, this is the one you carry with you all the time. And that's no big deal when you want to love Jesus, except you might be surprised that what you're experiencing up here is not what Jesus did. He didn't think like you. Because here in the Western world, we think like Westerners. That's, everybody that's raised and born in Europe or United Kingdom, North and South America, Australia, like that. We think like Westerners, but Jesus and his apostles and the old Hebrew prophets, they thought like Easterners. And not only Easterners, but they thought like ancient Easterners or ancient Hebrews. And that's a unique culture. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist anymore. But it's the one that the Hebrew prophets lived. It's the one that Jesus Christ lived. It's the one that his apostles lived. It's the one even that the Apostle Paul lived. Although the Apostle Paul was sort of eclectic, he could go from culture to culture. But that's the one you're going to have to figure out when you read the Bible, that this is a Western religion up here, but in the Bible, it's an Eastern religion. So what do I mean? Well, in religion, we are expressing our spiritual values or our spiritual issues. And we express it in our worldviews, how the heavens and the earth are made. We also express it in our cultural systems, the way we interact with one another and the things that we do. We also express it in a complete belief structure, which is this mix of spiritual values and cultural values and how we practically do things. So the religion we're going to have to ignore is this Western religion up here. When you read the Bible, you're going to have to adopt in your mind, this is an Eastern cultural system. And you're going to have to apply that Eastern cultural system to your reading. More specifically, you're going to have to apply an ancient Hebrew culture to your reading. Now that all sounds easy and good, except it's not easy. And it's wonderful, but it's not easy. When you read the Bible, you're reading the way ancient Hebrews expressed themselves. And you're reading their cultural values. You're reading their worldview. And it's extremely different from us. Like in our culture, we think of time as starting at a point, ending at a point. But the ancient Hebrews didn't think that way. We think that we are somewhere along this line. But the ancient Hebrews thought in terms of circles, eras. And they are somewhere within this era or circle. And there are people that lived in other circles and in other eras. And if you read the Bible, you actually see that. There's an Adam and Eve period. There's a patriarch period. There's, they envision a number of different epochs or arenas of time. That's one of the ways. Here in the West, we think in terms of logic. We have philosophical ideas, we have abstract ideas, and we think in terms of logic, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, and it leads us to a conclusion. And that's the way we relate our history, that's the way we relate our conversation. But in the East, they don't think that way at all. What they think is associated ideas, blocks of concepts, things that go together. Chronology, the order of events, is not real relevant. That's why the Gospels are so hard to synchronize one with the other, because they're not written in that manner at all. They're written in groups of ideas collected together. You can see that in all the Gospels. And that's why you've got to look at them from an Eastern point of view. So if you're going to read the Bible accurately and you're going to learn who Jesus was to really love him, you're going to have to start learning this ancient Hebrew culture with its ancient Hebrew worldview, its cultural systems, its entire belief systems. Because when you understand that one, then you understand what Jesus Christ was thinking when he said different things. A lot of people will take Jesus Christ's sermons and his teachings pretty much verbatim. Well, that's good, but you also need to take them verbatim within his culture, because he very often was quoting the Hebrew prophets. He was quoting Moses, and you need to understand what it meant to those people at that time living in that culture. Now, there is a group, maybe I should call it a movement, called the Hebrew Roots people. They're trying to do this, except they're making a little bit of a mistake. They're thinking that the old Hebrew culture is somehow more spiritual. And then they try to adopt it, and they make their church services look and sound like synagogues. Well, that's not really how to go about it. When you want to learn the ancient culture and get that context right for Jesus Christ, you have to go at it more like a biblical anthropologist, someone who studies man from Scripture. You really have to understand what's going on, like sort of reading between the lines, when you read the Old Testament, because that's the culture that is common to the Hebrew prophets and to Jesus and his apostles. The first Hebrew was Abraham. At least he's the first one named as a Hebrew in the Bible. His culture of a nomad and a sheep and goat herder is the foundation of the Hebrew language, that kind of lifestyle. Well, that's really foreign to us that are accustomed to cars and airplanes and television and internet. But that's their lifestyle. And you have to see their speeches and their concerns in that situation to understand what they want. There are so many differences. It's just almost unbelievable. Like, Hebrew is very concrete. Now, it's not that they didn't comprehend abstract ideas, but they used concrete language to describe them. I mean, one of their things that's just difficult for us to comprehend is that they had no sense of creation, something out of nothing, bang. They had no sense of that. All they had were these circular epochs that just go on, and on this way and on that way. I mean, even the word that got translated forever in your Old Testament doesn't actually mean forever. It means the vanishing point in the horizon. It means as far as we can see. Or it would be more Hebrew to have translated the word forever as for the foreseeable future. All you have to do is look this up in Strong's, and you'll see it says vanishing point, and you realize that when a Hebrew nomad stood out there looking over his sheep, and he's looking out at the horizon, and he's thinking, that's as far as I can see. Now, he knows there's things beyond that, but his language expresses, that's as far as I can see. And that's the expression that's used regarding the Mosaic Law. That's the expression used regarding a number of things. As far as I can see. So it's really important to understand the Hebrew concepts when you read the Bible, because the Hebrew concepts are not, I'd say, theological. They're more like just how things are made, how things are best done, how we do things. And to a Hebrew, everything he sees around him, his own environment, teaches him something about God because he thinks God made everything. So there's something about godliness in every object. Well, we don't think that way. We just call it Mother Nature. Well, that's pretty much paganism. I'm sorry, but it is. To call nature mother is a reflection of paganism, where the Mother Earth is a worship thing. That's the way the Greeks were into that, and so were many other cultures. But the Hebrews weren't. They didn't worship nature. Nature was an object lesson. Every tree, every rock, every little stream, the sunset and the sunrise, all object lessons. They were written in the stars. They had assigned object lessons to every constellation. That's just the way they thought. So when you start getting into that, you begin to understand who Jesus was. And you start getting a much deeper appreciation of what he said, what he did, the things that were important to him, things that were important to that culture. Like to the Hebrews, hospitality and your family reputation is paramount. in our families today, Dad lives in Ohio and son lives in Florida and another son lives over there in Kansas. We don't have this cohesive concept the way they did. But you have to look at it in those terms, their culture. As to what a lot of things mean, the theologians can argue if they want to. But the most important thing to do is to understand the culture it comes from. Have you ever noticed if people are talking the same language, but they come from two different cultural backgrounds, they still might not understand each other? Take a look.
Mayday, Mayday. Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you... Over. We are sinking. We are sinking.
Hello? This is the German Coast Guard.
We are sinking. We're sinking.
What are you thinking about?